Hello, today is Friday, June 7th, and welcome to episode 345 of Fault Lines, the National Security Institute's podcast that gets you quickly up to speed 3 times a week on the national security and foreign policy debates shaking up America. I'm NSI's Deputy Executive Director, Jessica Jones, and I'm joined today by two NSI Senior Fellows, Morgan Vigna and Les Munson. So we've traded out, we got Morgan today, but we're still out Jamil. So maybe one day, guys, we'll get him back in the hot seat. So today we're actually talking about yesterday, June 6th, which marked the 80th anniversary of the D-Day landings at Normandy, where more than 9,000 Americans from all 50 states and the District of Columbia are buried. President Biden was in France, actually in Normandy, alongside a selection of world leaders, presidents, and prime ministers from NATO nations, and even some non-NATO faces, including Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelenskyy, and some of the last remaining members of the invasion force. President Biden spoke at the commemoration. He remarked that the struggle between dictatorship and freedom is unending, and that the world must defeat another tyrant bent on domination. The president used his remarks to draw a direct line between the evil that U.S. soldiers faced in the 1940s and the current attempt by Russia to, invade Ukraine and extinguish democracy there. So it's no surprise why there are a lot of big names in Normandy. One very big one was missing, that of Russia's President Putin. He was not at the commemoration, though there was some discussion beforehand whether he would be invited, whether there'd be any Russian representation, but ultimately they were not invited. Putin was at 10 years ago, the 80th commemoration. And today, as of this recording, it hasn't happened yet, but President Biden is going to give another speech, which is going to, reportedly focus on democracy again, the defense of democracy, and the importance of NATO and the ongoing support to Ukraine as they try to fight off Russia. So, we're sitting here, and if we look forward to the 90th anniversary of D-Day, it's going to be 2034, which is crazy to think about. There will likely be no living survivors from the invasion. What do we think happens when we lose that human connection to that day? Or is that already lost? Morgan, I'll turn to you.
Thanks, Jess. Reflecting on this very meaningful anniversary, I am reminded of the importance of learning history. Our greatest generation is dying, and these D-Day veterans will soon no longer be with us. And so I wonder, sort of, what are we left with, right? And I think it's the lessons of the past that need to be learned, lest we be doomed to repeat them. And I sort of taking a look at sort of what we're seeing here in the United States, particularly with the campus protests at our most elite universities. And I'm just really heartbroken by the rabid anti-Semitism that we're seeing, where Jews are literally being called Nazis. What did our D-Day veterans fight for, right? They fought for the ability for Western civilization they fought for democracy, classical liberalism, and not only that, but ensuring that Jews have a right to exist, right? They fought against genocide and tyranny. And what we're seeing today is really disheartening, particularly amongst our younger generations. And so I do think that there is a critical need to take a step back, rethink, and reset what we are teaching our students today, how we are teaching history. It needs to be done from an academic perspective as opposed to an activist one.
Les, what do you make of, the celebrations yesterday, and as we look into the future, especially when it comes to the fighting going on in Ukraine?
Yeah, thanks, Jones. By the way, I think great topic to discuss, and good to pause a little bit and reflect on some of the bigger themes and issues and principles we believe in. And obviously the 80th anniversary of D-Day is a very big deal. It's very emotional for a lot of people. It's important to remember that the things we believe in, as Morgan was pointing out, democracy, individual liberty, the freedom to live the life you choose, the price for that is paid in blood. And people made the ultimate sacrifice for us to be able to lead these lives. That's going to happen again. The question is not if, the question is when. We need to know that and be ready for that. Not that we should be poised for war in the next 5 minutes, but we just need to understand as a people that we will come together and we will make sacrifices for the things we believe in. We get a little distracted now by how the president is walking around on the stage or some kind of nonsense like that. But at the end of the day, we will come together, we will unite, we will do the things we need to do to defend ourselves. And if you haven't been to Normandy, or you haven't seen the various memorials in Europe, if you go to London and St. Paul's Cathedral, at the back of that, there's a memorial to American war dead from World War II. It's hard not to get choked up seeing that, even though none of us were alive during World War II. My grandfather was in the Pacific during World War II. I think about that. I think about other friends and family that were involved in this. We're all involved in it by extension, and there's really nothing more important at the end of the day. And I think it's a nice lesson that some of the things that divide us today really are meaningless nonsense. And when we do focus on the long term and the things that really matter, Americans will come together and do the things necessary to defend Western values, freedom, and the things that we really hold dear.
To your point, President Biden yesterday, in addition to the remarks I said, also shared, NATO is more united than ever. Isolation was not the answer 80 years ago. It's not the answer today. And we talk about the lessons learned and the importance of the day. And to Morgan's point it's a little, I wonder if the lesson is felt by those who already feel it, and we know the importance, and it's lost on those who would learn a lot from it. And we read the articles, we read the statements and the president's remarks, but there's a lot of Americans who don't. Right, that day is like any other day for them, and especially as we're looking to conflict in Europe, and we're looking to continue supporting a partner and friend there. If those that are already inclined not to support, I wonder if that the day really marked anything important to them. And to Morgan, hopefully, I wanted to end on a positive note with you, Les. But Morgan has got me feeling worried for our future, and that day is lost on so many as we continue to lose living survivors.
I will give you the antidote to Morgan's statement, which, by the way, is not wrong at all, and I agree with her sentiments entirely. But I do think we get distracted by a small minority that is very vocal, and for some reason our reporter friends seem to think that's the only story. There's a whole nother story about young people in this generation who are willing to serve their country, who are willing to serve in harm's way, who understand the values that we all believe in. They may not be the ones doing the provocative thing on some famous campus, but they're the ones who are going to matter when push comes to shove, and when we need to make sacrifices. They're going to be the ones who do it, and they will be the next great generation.
So I will note that we do have a massive recruiting problem here in the United States for the U.S. military.
Oh my gosh,
so
Morgan
not to throw cold water on this, Les, but we do have some recruiting challenges within the U.S. military. With that said, though, I wholeheartedly agree with what Les said, and I think a really good opportunity for Biden could have been, going and speaking to a school. Jill Biden could have gone, administration officials could have gone and used this anniversary to go and educate and talk about the importance of D-Day and of this history. So I personally would have loved to have seen that, but clearly going to actual Normandy and celebrating the memory of our war dead is a priority.
Morgan, your dog agrees with you.
Yeah,
I know, I'm sorry. Jackson is vehemently.
Jackson is also toasting, the commemoration. Just as a funny tidbit, I know there's a lot of stories of, what happened yesterday, and to Les's point of where people are sitting, standing. I did one before a speech. President Biden met with a number of veterans of the Normandy campaign, and a lot of them are in wheelchairs because, of course, they're incredibly elderly at this point. And so one of them, one vet's advice to the president was, "Don't get old," which is just funny. The photo of the two of them, oof. So to Morgan and Les,
it does beat the alternative.
That is true.
Yep.
That's a wrap. Thanks so much to Devlin Burney, Claude Jennings, and the entire NSI team for their help in producing today's episode. Join us again on Monday, June 10th, for another episode of Fault Lines, the National Security Institute's podcast that gets you smart fast on the national security and foreign policy debates shaking up America. We're on YouTube. Check out our faces there. If you like what you heard, be sure to rate, review, and subscribe. Have a great weekend.